All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our No Code Ops live community show. Happy Thursday. If this is your first time here, we're an international community for no code operators. And what that means, we're a community for people working in operations and leveraging no code to scale up their career. So today is the final episode of our series of Build Your CRM in Public. And so far, we've been exploring how to build your CRM using Airtable and automating it with Zapier. And so we've been looking at best practice on how to do that with our expert guest speaker, Gareth, which I'm going to pull in here, and our CEO at No Code Ops, Phil. So I'm just going to call them in. Hi, people. Welcome back. Happy Thursday. How's everyone doing today?
Doing amazing. Can we talk about that intro video, though?
That was
smoking.
How cool was that? Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. You know, we're starting off, the new final episode with a bang. So
I love it. Stepping up the game. Good stuff.
Gareth, you got some good FaceTime in that promo also.
That's probably why I liked it so much.
I love it.
And, welcome everyone in the audience as well. Let us know in the chat, give us a wave. We would love to see who's back here with us, or if we have any newcomers, because today is your time to shine. Bear in mind, I promised our community that we're going to keep the last 15 minutes of our event reserved to your questions. So make sure you drop them in the chat if you haven't submitted them into the form, which I have here. Hey, Carol.
Hey, Carol.
Amazing to start seeing the first couple of people dropping in. And so today's our final event. Does any of you want to give us a quick kind of catch up on what we've been covering along the past month?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to do a quick overview of what we've been covering, and then would want to kick it over to Gareth on just talking a bit more about what they all do at Gap Consulting and how incredible they are. And then we will jump right in to the final kind of steps of this thing. So here at No Code Ops, we wanted to do something a bit interesting over the past month, which was build our CRM in public. So we are building our CRM on Airtable and Zapier and Webflow forms. And so all the forms on the No Code site link into, go to a Zap and go to an Airtable base. But we really want to make a full-fledged CRM that our company uses every day. And we want to do it in public with y'all. So that's what we've been doing. And I've been learning step by step on how to build things with Gareth. Has been really teaching me hands-on. So we covered things such as, why all your forms should go into one table, and how forms should be different from contacts, and how to take weird submission things like a bunch of checkboxes and turn them into the data, how you actually want it, into like a multi-select field. So we've covered some really phenomenal formulas, automations, Zapier automations and workflows. And today we're really going to be diving into another multi-select automation. We're going to be diving into transferring, once now we've built this shell from, once we've built this kind of framework, how to take all of our old data and put it in here in a way that it is transformed into exactly how we want it. And then just some CRM dorkiness around like accounts and opportunities and how those relate to the contacts and forms tables that we've built. So with that, before we jump in, Gareth, want to tell us a bit more about A, anything I missed, and B, about Gap Consulting?
Sweet, thank you. So I don't think you missed anything. That pretty much sums up where we're at and where we're headed. It's going to be tight today, especially since Claudia has promised 15 minutes of questions, but we'll do our best. Gap Consulting has, I think a really great synergy with No Code Ops. So I'm really grateful to you guys for even coming out and inviting me on. It's really been a fun experience. Gap Consulting kind of grew from nothing over the last 6 years or so. It sounds crazy to say that. It all started when I got laid off from my corporate finance job back in 2018. And I just kind of stumbled into Airtable, and I went where everybody in our generation does to find answers. Like, how do I use this tool? I went to YouTube and there was like nothing. It was crickets. And I was like, how this tool has so much power, and I can tell, but I just don't know how to get there. And so I started learning and just teaching myself. And since I hadn't been able to find any, videos on it, I just started creating them. And literally within the first week, people started calling and saying, "Hey, I saw this video you did. How can I work with you?" And
help me.
So it's grown from that. And today we offer anything from like courses for people who want to learn themselves to, hourly consulting. If you want to work one-on-one with somebody, much like Phil and I are doing here, just do it in a Zoom call and fix your problem. And then our big offer is our development team that just builds stuff from scratch. And while it's expensive, generally around $12,000 per project, it's significantly less than people spend before no code, right? It's like a tenth the cost to get the same results as we're seeing and demoing here. So consider myself super fortunate. Happy accidents all around, and just kind of landed on my feet. And I'm honored to be a member of the community and contribute in any way.
That's
And
fantastic.
we're happy to work with you, man. So cool.
100%. Can I say that I feel a little bit, well, not emotional, but a bit nervous. There is our, last event. I don't know, like we've been having you for such a long time, or at least for a month.
Miss you.
We're gonna miss you.
Hey guys, you can always find me on YouTube.
I'll feed my parasocial relationship with you further. Funny enough, as I was figuring out stuff the other night, I was looking at your YouTube videos.
That's what we're there for. Honestly, YouTube is the strangest thing, because it allows you to form almost like a relationship with people that it's one-sided, obviously, but people will get on calls with us, and the first time I've ever met them, and they're like starstruck.
I know you.
Yeah, I feel like I know you. So it's an awesome tool.
I love it. Well,
awesome.
with all that said, one quick plug for Gareth. Do you want to talk about your course over email real quick, and then we'll jump right in?
Yeah. So we have 2 courses if you're interested. Are you talking about the crash course?
The crash course.
Yes. If you are new to Airtable and you want to make sure that you have all the fundamentals mastered, I'll go ahead and drop it in the chat here. This is our Airtable crash course, and it will walk you through the fundamental pieces of Airtable within a series of, I think, about 7 days or so, where we're going to just take you through all the different key components. It's garethpronovost.com/airtable-crash-course. And check that out if you want to kind of go step by step through what we're talking about here today.
Last quick note on that front before we jump right in, two things. One, Shahil, can't wait to see your YouTube channel. Keep us posted for sure in the community.
I'm waiting for that, because he told me that he's gonna use me as a student, and so Shahil, don't forget about that.
I'm gonna keep you accountable. And then the second thing is, can I just say one thing we're gonna totally just steal from you, Gareth, which I think was really smart. Is when you put a video link on LinkedIn with one of your videos, you don't link it directly to YouTube. You link it to a landing page on your site that has the YouTube embed plus a transcript plus a call to action sign up form, which is way better for conversions, I'm assuming. And I thought that was really smart. And
hey, thanks for noticing that. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. You're still getting the YouTube views, right? It still counts for your channel, but you're getting the traffic to your website, and you're able to draw that conversion.
Yep.
It's the way to go.
Money.
And if you're curious about this, I teach people how to become consultants in my second brand. So
we'll have a whole other course on that, a whole other thing on that. So here we go.
Should we get started?
Let's share my screen. Yep.
Yeah, I'll pull it in.
This is why we're time crunched, because we mess around too much. All right.
I know, we have too much fun. Okay, here we go.
Spot on.
So I'm just going to jump right as soon folks have watched our past videos, and so here's one thing that we're seeing, Gareth, right, is that when somebody signs up into one of our forms, and we're capturing all this data in this unified forms kind of table, right? We've got this field on our contacts we like to call attributes because sometimes we add them in post after their form. Sometimes it's because of a form, right? So I want to know all the ways you've interacted with our company so I can sort on that and all of that jazz, right? So if you've submitted a community form, I want community to show up here. But then later, if you also submit, if I talk to you about the conference completely offline, I might want to add conference, right? Whatever.
Right.
Or, you just submitted the conference form and, maybe it went in reverse, right? So I want to both be able to manually add things here, right? But also have things added here, on this contact level, right? Because I might have manually created a contact, right? And put nothing there or something. And, I want to have a form be able to add data here without rewriting it.
Right.
And that data should basically be like, so there's kind of two ways, right? One, if you submit a conference form, I want conference filled out. But also, if newsletters check, I want newsletter put there, right? Because that means you went to our website, you signed up for the conference, and you checked, I want to subscribe to the newsletter. But you also might just go to our footer and fill out the newsletter form, right? Where we're actually not getting any of this data, right? We're just getting the fact that you wanted to sign up for the newsletter and just your, that, right? So that would also add that attribute, right? So how would I do this?
All right, so let's rewind just a little bit here. So one thing that I would normally recommend is to normalize your data wherever possible, which really means, like in plain English, we're going to try to boil it down to its bare element so that it only exists in a single place, right? Mm-hmm. Here we have, let me rephrase that. It exists at a single source, right? So we can look it up and we can do stuff to it. But the reason I bring this up is because we're tracking newsletter here in two separate places. We're saying, hey, they filled out a newsletter form, or they filled out a community form, but they opted in for the newsletter. So in general, I would try to steer away from this, but I can totally appreciate the way your forms are set up and why this is necessary for you. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, all right. That was my spiel.
Two questions. So one question there.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that if they have newsletter form here, well, because newsletter is a type of form and I want to track that, right?
Right.
But would you recommend for newsletter that like it also just automatically selected that? So I'm only keeping track of newsletter stuff in one place?
Yeah. Yes. And the reason is we can build an automation that says, hey, we got a checked box on that newsletter thing. So now we're going to add the that newsletter attribute to the contact, right? And if we include that in two different places, now we have to build two different automations, one that triggers on the checkbox, one that triggers on the form. So
I can set that up. I'll handle that separately in Zapier, where if someone fills out a newsletter, I'll grab their name, I'll put their email, I'll put newsletter here, and I'll just check that box. So let's imagine anytime someone does newsletter, the box is checked.
Perfect. So that makes it easier for us. Now we only have to build one automation. So let's talk through like what that automation should look like just in plain English.
Yep.
If a form is submitted and newsletter box is checked, then we want to add the attribute to the contacts. And note that I said add, not replace the existing attributes, right? We want to keep whatever's there and add newsletter to the mix.
So, right, because there's two possible places an attribute can come from. This being checked or this form type as well, by the way.
Right. So this would be like another automation you would build as well that says they filled out the community form. So if I receive a community form, I'm adding that attribute to the contact as well.
Yes, correct.
So we can do both of these here. It shouldn't take us all that long. Let's flip into the automation and start with the newsletter one.
Okay.
We don't have anything built on this yet, right? We're going to start from scratch. Awesome. Yep. Let's create an automation. And quick plug right here to organization inside of Airtable automations. On the bottom left corner of your screen, you see that you can create sections. Strongly recommend that you create, they're basically folders. A section is a folder that will store automations. Strongly recommend that you try to group stuff that's related. So if you have form automations, keep them all in one place. If you have, I don't know, whatever other automations you have throughout, keep them, try to keep them sorted and whatnot. You can just click drag as Phil is demoing here, and pretty simple.
That's so
Makes it way
beautiful. It makes my OCD rest at ease.
And also on that note, you'll want to rename your automations. This is best
Yeah.
practice to make sure that you know, otherwise if you try to find stuff, it's a nightmare.
Naming convention.
Yeah. My preference on naming conventions is to say the trigger straight into the automation. So like if I'll say something like if box is checked, add newsletter attribute or something like that. Right. We don't have to necessarily do that today in the nature of time, but just best practices.
Okay, cool.
All right. So we got a sweet little automation started. Let's go ahead and build our trigger, which initiates every automation. In our case, we're triggering off of a new record in the form table that has a box checked, right? So we can say when a record matches conditions, and namely that condition, well, now we have to choose the table being the forms table, and the condition being that box is checked. I think it's called newsletter. So that's it. It's super easy. Anytime we see a form in the record in the forms table with the box checked, let's go ahead and choose the record so that we have a piece of information that we'll use here in the next step. And then we're going to add an action step here. So now we're happy with our trigger. We are going to update the record. So what record are we updating? Well, for a form to, oh, hold on. Let me rephrase, or let me think more completely through this. We're going to update a contact record. We've triggered off of a form. Now it stands to reason that a form will also always have a contact because a form can't be submitted by a null value. But let's be sure in our trigger to think through the ways that our automation could break. One way that our automation could break is we don't have a contact to update. So if we want to make sure that it doesn't break, we can go back to our trigger and establish an additional condition under newsletter. We can add another condition, and the contact field is not null. Yeah, exactly. Full name is what we call it.
Yep.
That's our linked relationship is not empty. So hopefully that makes sense. If anybody has questions about that in the audience, let me know.
It's just quick recap, everybody. When a new form submission comes in, the first thing we have it do is look if the contact exists or not. If the contact does not yet exist, it will create it. If the contact exists, it will just link a new form to it.
Cool. So what we're doing here is just trying to foolproof our automations. And I strongly recommend that in foolproofing automations, you pay special attention to your triggers, right? Make sure that you have all the data you need under every circumstance so that your automation doesn't break. All right, let's go ahead and update the record. Our second step here. Sorry about that. We use a record again. That's perfectly great. Update a record.
Why is this like this fixed configuration?
We didn't.
Oh, because I haven't done it. Oh, that was part of the trigger. Got it. Okay, sorry. Yep.
No, all good. So we are looking in our contacts table, and the record that we want to use. Now remember, we use record IDs. We're going to not use the record that triggered the automation because the record that triggered was a form. What we want to look at is inside of the record that triggered. Let's find the record ID for the full name field. So we can type in full name, and that is the record that triggered this. Now, one thing I don't love about this, if you noticed, is it's not using the record ID itself. It was using the output of that. So we can probably get by with this. In a perfect world,
what would be the downside of perfect world? What would you want?
I would want I would want to know for a fact that it was the record ID. So one way that we could do this, well, right now I'm not entirely sure if that's a record ID or if it's using the name just based on the.
So actually it uses both. It actually now Airtable's made an update here where it actually is both. It's just displaying it differently, I think. I feel like.
I love it. If you can turn that to the ID, because that's the property you just chose over there, the ID will always be unique, and you never have to worry about, I have 2 or 3 John Smiths in my CRM and now it's broken.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like using IDs.
Cool. Yeah. It says
Let's do
it's
that.
displaying
We'll have
ID.
to test it because I haven't seen that live before, but it
Okay.
looks to me like it's doing what you think. All right.
Cool.
So let's talk about fields. What are we doing? We need to update the attribute, right?
So this record ID is like, what are you matching on? And then this is what do you want to update?
Yeah, exactly. So everything that's happening in fields is the stuff, the actions that we're taking, like what fields are you working on? What fields are we adjusting? All right, so now let's pause and think logically through what we need this thing to do again. We need to update the existing attributes and add newsletter, which is different than just creating newsletters. So right now, if what you just did, you brought newsletter in, if you create
it would
the
overwrite.
automation, yes, it's going to override, right? And I would have to test this to verify, but my suspicion is that that's what would happen. So instead, what I want to do is before I fill out this attributes, I want to say, here's what I know the current attributes are.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to append that with or add to that the newsletter option.
Mm-hmm.
So then this is actually making me think of another potential problem here, which would be what if you
have newsletter there? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to test this because we could write that into the trigger as well and say only in the condition where newsletter isn't already showing up, do I want the automation to run? So
oh man, that's going to get complicated for all the different ways that like what could be there already.
100%. But so let's solve the first problem first and see if we can, and then we'll test it and see maybe Airtable's smart enough to not add an additional newsletter because it'll say, it's already there.
Yep.
So before we update the record, we need to know what's already in there so that when we tell it what we want the new output to be, we can include the old stuff as well.
Yep.
So let's add another action step. We'll say add an advanced logic or action.
So I'm not doing anything right here?
Not here yet. Yeah, we'll come back to this. And we're going to find a record or find records. And now reorder this because before I perform my update, I want to find the record. And really what this will allow me to do is go into greater detail on the contact, and I can apply a condition here. So that, and the condition will be, add the condition where the record ID, let me see, what do we have? All right, so again, I want to use record ID wherever possible, and we don't show that yet. So let's go back to our data source. I'm just going to bring a record ID in. If we can leave automations for a second. And in our contacts table, I don't yet display my record ID anywhere. So we can call upon that with a simple formula. And just use a formula here.
Oh, it doesn't do it. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Stop jumping ahead, Phil.
And now record underscore ID open close parenthesis. There it is. Make sure to close it, and then you can create the field. Now, just a quick reminder for anybody: a record ID is automatically created, or a record ID is automatically assigned to every record that comes into existence. It's always unique. The end.
And Gareth, can you tell us what the final goal of this build, like what's the ideal outcome, of that you're trying to achieve here?
Well, what we're trying to do right now is say, hey, we have a form that was submitted with the opportunity to update the attributes of the contacts. So if that box is checked, we want to update the contact attributes with newsletter. And notice that I say update because we don't want to replace the existing attributes. We want to just add newsletter. All right, excellent. So let's go back to the trigger and start again, like actually pulling data in. Just choose a record. I don't think we need to do this because we didn't actually change the trigger, but it's best practice to go back and kind of like go through. So choose record on that blue button.
Oh, wait, choose record. Oh, okay, choose record. Got it.
We find that. All right, now we can go into find records and we can set up our find records again. And we are going to say under conditions where that new field that you added, record ID, is exactly, rather than contains, yeah, is. And then we're going to pull in dynamic data here. So let's hit that little gear icon, change it to dynamic, and then we'll hit the plus. And we need to find the record ID from the full name field. So we can look at full name. And can we bring the record ID in there? No. Okay. So Airtable is going to be a pain. This is the fun stuff of doing this live. Yay. So, all right.
I love it.
Our data schema. Let's go back into data, leave our automations. And we need to bring in the record ID of the contact into the forms because we don't currently have that data available to us. Do a lookup. So we can do a lookup field. And I would, just call it like contact ID or something like that. I also want to point out that the further along you get in your builds, the more complicated these things get, right? So like we're seeing now that we've got layers and layers, right?
Yep.
All right. So here's our contact ID lookup. Great. We don't have one in the second record because it's not linked to a contact. Let's continue back into automations and hope that that does the trick. We need to pull in trigger data again. So let's go back to our trigger and choose a record again, making sure that we have all the information in that record. No, you're in the right place.
I don't want to. Yeah, I just don't want. I want to get. Okay, Jane Doe. I just want to make sure I have one with a record ID.
Well, since we've stipulated that full name is not empty, it must have.
Got it. Okay, cool.
So we can go find records now. Let's get back in there, and we're going to build our condition. Record ID is dynamic, and we'll call upon. Hopefully, we can now access that new field that you built.
No.
So it's saying no valid nesting options. Okay. Well, that's really going to throw a monkey wrench into our plan.
But this is like look, when it comes to no code, there's like certain limitations we have, right? With every layer of abstraction means there's some limitations. So like, yeah, just going to have to figure out how to work around it.
Yeah. And it's a learning opportunity whenever this happens, and we're doing it live. So love a good troubleshooting.
Here we go. So Gareth.
All right, let's do this another way then. Let's bring the multi-select data that we have on the contact. Let's bring it into the form because we can look it up, and we can take that and rather than look up the record. So, all right, I'm going down a rabbit hole. Let's eliminate our find records step here because it's not allowing us to look up what we want to look up, which is kind of maddening, but whatever. Let's go back to our data. And we'll do that later. Let's add to our forms a new field. We're going to look up the current multi-select. So the current attributes. Let's just call this current attributes from contact. We use a lookup field type here. Jared's asking you why don't you use a form that will let you update a record. And the form that he has is on his website, and people aren't logged in. So it's not like they're updating existing data. They are submitting new data.
Yep.
And Gabriel, says you need to run again the trigger.
I thought we did that, but maybe I did miss it. All right, so we have now our we have the current attribute data. Let's get back into automations. we will run the trigger again, as Gabrielle has suggested. Choose the record. Okay, so now we've reset the information in there. We're going to update the record. Remember, we've mapped this to update the full name, and we want to update it with the existing attributes. So let's go in with some dynamic data. And we'll bring in the new field that we just built.
Finally.
Yeah. And we don't want the length. The length is simply a number. We want the value. Drill into there. And what do we have? Hopefully name works here. I'm honestly not sure. All right, now add comma, because we want to add an additional attribute here. Space newsletter. Or I guess we don't need a space. We learned that last time, didn't we?
Yep.
And this would be case sensitive to your multi-select field. So if you capitalize newsletter, make sure to capitalize it here.
And if I left it like that, it would create another newsletter with lowercase.
I suspect so. Let's generate a preview and see what it tells us. There we go. So we have the new attribute of newsletter, but we want to, I can't really see. It's kind of blurry on my screen. Does that look right to you, Phil?
Has this like blank thing here, and I don't know what that is.
It's
like just a blank.
Let's give it a whirl and see what it throws out at us. It might create a blank output.
Let's see.
In which case we can.
What do I do to make that happen?
Let's turn the automation on and just give it a few test runs, see what it does. So understand that this will only ever work for new records meeting these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So right now you have a bunch of form data. I'm not sure what you're doing.
Yeah,
right
I'm just submitting a new record. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So because if I write it in, it won't necessarily do it until this happens, right?
Another thing you can do is just uncheck one of these boxes and then recheck it to test the automation.
Oh yeah, that's a lot easier. That makes sense. So now that's checked.
Who's connected there? Yeah, so it did create a blank, which I don't like, which we can fix. But it added newsletter.
But it did add newsletter. But here's the thing: if it did it here, let's see what happens.
I don't know if it registered. Yeah, there. Okay,
that worked. That worked. Now my other question is: now I can't add anything here because it's a lookup, right? But if I went to the contacts and I added newsletter already, and I went back to the forms and I checked newsletter, what would happen?
I love that you're testing this because that's exactly what I would want. Exactly what I would recommend. You have to test all the different options here, right? And we see that newsletter didn't do anything. It didn't break.
Didn't do anything. So let's just get rid of this blank. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can talk through it if you want, because I know Claudia is going to turn us over to 15 minutes for questions.
Yep, 10 minutes left.
Or we can jump all the way into it, like whichever one you want to do.
Let's just jump in because I want to save time for questions and possibly data transfer, but I don't know if we're going to even have time for that because this is such a good meaty problem.
Okay, so let's think logically then, and we won't actually build it, but we'll talk logically through what we would build, if that works. So sure. If there is an array already, so okay, what is throwing this error? What's causing this error is when we have nothing in our lookup field, and then we run the automation, and it creates this blank thing, this blank attribute.
Yes.
So what we would want to do is build conditional logic inside of our automation that says if the length of the lookup field, so we can build Airtable conditional logic by saying add advanced logic or action. And so inside add advanced logic, we have at the very top there conditional logic. which runs different actions based off of certain conditions, as it says. So we can look it up and say, if the lookup field, if the contact, what is it called? Yes, that field right there, if the length is 0, then all we want to do, what that means is there's nothing in there, right? So if the length is 0, then all we want to do is add newsletter. So you can go back to the record that you've already created, the action step, and you can duplicate it.
How do I do that?
Where you've got the little update record, that the second step right now, you can just duplicate this and then drag it down into your conditional section.
Get out of here. You know, Zapier doesn't even let you do that. If you have something created in a path, you can't bring it out of a path. So frustrating.
Oh yeah, I totally know. That's why Zapier is not my first choice.
Oh,
Well, we can ask them next week. They're going to be our guests next week.
I'm gonna give that to Lars.
I love Zapier.
I'm gonna tell Lars I need to be able to get an action out of a path, because like when I create all these things in a path, it's a stupid thing. Okay, they'll fix it. They're
hey,
good.
look,
Okay,
all softwares have their benefits and their drawbacks, right? Like you just have to understand what you're dealing with. All right, so
what
inside
it's saying
here,
now is,
inside of here, we have this condition that says we're only going to perform this action if the contact length, that is that lookup field that we built, is 0. There's nothing there.
Yes.
And so then we would update the record. So click on the one that you just duplicated, that little step, and remove the part where you brought in the pre-existing attributes. Remove the comma. All you want is
it's just removing that dynamic thing, and you're just adding that new thing. Now we're done. That's it.
Yeah. Now add a new condition, because you don't want to run that update record. So then, and now drag your other one down. So we have that update record one that you created. Just drag it down. And this is the default action. And up here, you would say in the upper right corner, if no other conditions are met, then run this step. In the upper right corner, there's a little radio button. Yeah.
Got it. So it's like a filter, essentially. It's filtering down.
Yeah. It's like a path. We're going to do one of the two, right?
Yeah.
We're going to, one of the two conditions will be met.
So if there's nothing there, just put newsletter. If there's something there, then use that formula to make it like appended on.
1000%. Click update.
Sick.
This is important. There's that little blue bar up there. You got to click update. Otherwise, the whole thing won't put your new changes into effect.
This is beautiful. Okay. So I get this. We have 7 minutes. 7 minutes in heaven. For all of you over 30, to talk about. I got Claudia.
All the kids are like, what?
Yeah, I'm confused.
All right. So I want to talk about transferring data, right? So what we've now done in this beautiful thing, right? Like, you know, if you add these checks here, right? Like it's automatically, you know, doing these things, you know, this formula and this beautiful tool selection. If you check this thing, it's you know, if you uncheck or check this thing. Oh, by the way, good opportunity to test this. Let's see.
Fingers.
Come on.
Yeah, seriously, what's the delay, huh?
Oh, maybe because there's no. Oh, it actually worked by not working because there's no.
We don't have a contact
name. We have no contact. So here.
Newsletter's there already.
Yeah. Okay. Well, either way, here. Let me just like delete everything. Or no, wait.
Yeah, go to Fill Tester, delete it all. There you go. Perfect. Fill Tester.
Fill Tester. Let's see if it works. There it goes. Great. It worked. Cool. So here's my question, right? I've got all this beautiful stuff happening here, but I've got all this old data.
Yeah.
How do I get this into there and to do all the things I want it to do?
100%. So couple of easy options for you. If you have data in rows and columns, like an Excel sheet, Google Sheet, whatever, or another Airtable base, you can literally copy and paste that data directly into Airtable. Like you can select this section. The big thing is make sure that what you're copying and pasting is with two things. One, the fields that you're copying and pasting must be in the same order, obviously, right? Yep. Airtable's not going to be smart enough to know. Like, oh, same that's columns, the last name, right? The other thing is make sure that you're copying and pasting data in what I call dependent fields. I'm sorry, I totally lied. Independent fields. An independent field allows you to edit data directly. A dependent field derives its value from some sort of formula, lookup. So a dependent field can't be overridden, right? You can't, if you go into, you can't just like type over on a formula, right? Like a formula derives its value by the field settings. So you can only
right. And one of the problems here is that I may have a person who, is submitted multiple forms from here, right? But the way that we have data coming in is it splits. As soon as the form data comes in, it splits immediately contact and form data and then links them. But here they're already just one thing.
Right. So what you need to do when you're copying and pasting or importing, which is a whole other thing, but just I'll time out and come back to that. When you're copying and pasting data, you can only do it to one table at a time. So first, you need to set up your contact information. Like just create the contact. What lives at the contact level? First name, last name, email, company, whatever else we put in there. What's the second thing we do? Then once we have the contacts, now we can bring in the form submissions per those contacts and link them appropriately to the contact.
Ah, got it. But let me then ask you this, my friend. If that is the case, problem. We have an automation that goes, that looks when adding data. The automation lives at the Zapier level that checks for dupes. But what if I have dupes here, right?
Well, when you create
these are
them,
forms.
Yes. So if you're worried that you have duplicates, then what you should do is first import your contacts, then run a dedupe on your database to make sure that you eliminate any duplicates so that you have only one existence for each contact, and then you can link your forms.
And how do you run it? Like, I'm just curious, right? Like if I were, I'm just
sorry. I thought we talked about this before. I guess not.
No.
Up in extensions, you can click on extensions in the upper right corner of any Airtable database. Click add an extension and look at the dedupe extension. It will allow you to run a dedupe, which is for deduplication. And you can remove duplicate data based on any kind of, setup that you want to apply here. So you could say anywhere that I have the same email address, that is the same contact. And so you would just toggle email, and you can choose if it's exactly the same, similar, as in like caps and stuff, or if it's fuzzily the same. That's a technical term.
Cool. Fuzzy. And then what?
Something's missing. I feel like that's all you need to select. Oh, it's just telling you right here there's no duplicates. You can see it on the right-hand side. We couldn't find any duplicates. If it did find duplicates, it would tell you, and then you could review the duplicates and decide what to do with them.
Got it. So like if I'm just curious,
just copy
right?
one.
Like
if
how do you copy records, by the way? Like I know how to copy.
Right click, yeah.
But I can't do it with multiple?
Just one.
No, you can only duplicate one at a time.
Okay, so now I've duplicated that, right? But now let's say one came from this and the other came from this. I don't know, whatever. And
you can go
one
back
had
into your
company URL.
Extension.
Okay, cool. And let's just say also. Okay, cool. putting it to
Cool.
the test. Okay, now I go to my dedupe extension.
Yeah, just click on full screen on that extension. It's there. Click where it says make this bigger. Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
And there it is. So you can review your set of duplicates by clicking in the bottom right and decide what to do with each instance of duplicative data.
How do I do that? Like, what do I do from here?
X
I'm
out
confused.
here. In the bottom
Yeah.
right
30
corner, say review one
30
set.
seconds left.
Okay.
Because I can
And
see
now
how
what do I do?
sneaky you are.
Make a selection. So you
Make a
decide, you know,
selection.
which one of these is going to be the master data, which one is not. So you would select it, either hit 1 or 2 on your keyboard or click it. You can say use as a primary record or exclude it or whatever. And you can choose to merge them. So it's all right there.
And then if I go back, and then this is it, Claudia. How do I get out of this screen?
There's an
You can
X.
hit that X in the upper right. Yeah. So now you've only got the one.
Got it. And this is a single set. That's why I didn't. Okay, cool. Which I wouldn't have anyway because it would just be a contact. So it'd be a lot more clean information. Go team. I got it. So now so basically just like to sum that up and then we can go to questions. What I'm essentially going to do is make a clean thing of just contact of, you know, dedupe to the point where it's only contacts because contact information is not changing, form data does, right? Dedupe all my contacts, copy paste that into contacts, then paste another thing into forms because those can be duplicates, whatever, no big deal, and those should automatically link up.
Yes, the thing you have to make sure is that you're properly linking to those to that other table. So you'll need to when you link them, remember however your information how does your record show up when it's linked? For you, I don't remember if we built a full name at company or if we just went with a full name, but whatever that is, that's the value you have to paste in.
Yeah, it has to be exactly whatever that value is. This is not unique enough. This would usually say like John Dobbs at XYZ company, which it does not.
Yeah, so if you don't have that data already that way, then you have to first create a field that looks like that in order to do that.
Yep. Cool.
And Phil, before we open up the floor to the audience, I'm going to ask you a question. As a CEO, why is this so important to you? Like, why, what's the benefits you're bringing to the company right now? And I guess this could be interesting for any other, you know, anyone here that is running a company.
Yeah, two things. So one, companies like ours, right? Like at the end, like we do both. We do a lot of things, right? Like we are a community-led SaaS company, right? So like we do a lot of community work. We do a lot of event work, right? We have our software operator that's coming out this summer. And all of those things work together. Our goal with this company was to create an ecosystem for no-code operators, not just technology, not just a community, right? But all of those things in support of no-code operations professionals. And when you have that complex of an ecosystem, you know, you need a tool that no tool out of the box just did all of this stuff for us. We wanted to create it on our own, right? And so this gives me the language to communicate what does a contact at our company mean in terms of data so that we can all interact with it. So that way I'm not building my own weird CRM somewhere and Jen is building her own weird CRM somewhere and you're doing yours, that they are all linked in the ways they need to be and unlinked in the ways they don't need to be. Because like you might want to store data on there about community stuff that's maybe not as relevant on the sales side and vice versa, but they should all be referenceable and we shouldn't be creating two sets of contacts. There should only be one set of contacts, right? And so like understanding that both will help us scale the company and like make sure that no one misses important information, right, across the board, that like we're talking to the right people at the right time about the right things. But also this gets us closer to our end user, right? Like the reason I'm not just like saying, hey, let's just hire someone to do this thing is because I want to be in the weeds of these problems as much as I can, because I know a little bit about Airtable, right? I'm still learning more, but I like this is a lot of the problems that we're facing here. Like a lot of these things are also addressed in the tool that we're launching. So it's good to get closer to our ICP. Like Gareth is an example the other day. I deleted a field in the Airtable that was hooked up to a Zap and got no warning about it. Right. And like that would not be the case with Operator, with our tool that we're building that's coming out soon. Like if you delete a field in Airtable that is hooked up to a Zap, the relevant people and departments are notified.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Well, a little bit later than what I'd like to be, but let's open up the floor to our questions. So I can see Richard here has a question. So question on Airtable, is it possible to make fields from a linked table display as a dropdown when only allowing a single value?
I'm not sure what about the question, Richard. Can you add some additional context for me? Do you guys understand? And am I overcomplicating things?
So, you know what he's saying, right? And Richard, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, right? But I think what he's asking is I have a bunch of items on a list in a field. Can I make I have a bunch of items in a table. I would like to make the drop down. Now, I would do that via linked recording, right? Which is essentially what that is doing, which we can show in a moment if you want, Richard. But he's saying, can those automatically update the multi-select field or single select field from whatever he's adding to that table?
Typically, it makes a pop-up of the record to select.
Right. That's like the linked record thing, right? So I'm going to share my screen, Claudia, and Gareth, like, let me, I think this is what he's asking for. Let me see if you can see can you put my screen up, Claudia?
Yeah, cool. There it is.
So I think what he's asking, right, is like, if he's got a table here, right? And I'm just going to create a blank table, right? And there's a list of things, right? So I don't know, let's just call it like tool 1, tool 2, tool 3, right? And I go somewhere and I'm just, okay, yes, today it works like this, where, I can add a linked, I can create a linked record from, table 6, right? And I can just say like, okay, here's my multi-select. But I guess, Richard, are you asking, and I think you said correct. I think he's asking, instead of it being like this, can that list of tools turn into a multi-select somewhere else, right? So that if I update tool 4, instead of it just being available in this capacity, like a linked record, could it actually be a real multi-select like this? And those tool 1, 2, tool 3 are automatically and dynamically updated and controlled by that table.
Oh, interesting. I didn't get that at all from the question. Sorry. And thanks for breaking it down for me.
All good. Oh, I got it. I described it well.
Okay, you read mine.
Make it look like a drop down. I speak no coder fluently.
I was gonna say, yeah. No, that's not possible.
Cool. Is
Sorry,
it not
Richard.
possible, really?
I mean, so what you're asking is if you want a multi-select field to be a linked, they're different fields with totally different properties. So you could have a linked record field that you build automations. If you could have 2 different field types, a linked record and a multi-select, and you can build automations so that they stay in sync. If a change happens to one, it happens to the other, and vice versa. It'll use a lot of automation because it's going to go back and forth.
Automations. Richard, the other thing I would say is right now, when you say drop down, to me, drop down reads as a single select, not a multi-select. And one thing you can do here in this is you can turn off allow multiple records. And it doesn't necessarily look like a drop down, but it's essentially acting the same way because you can only add one field. But you can also do it with Gareth's way in a lot of automations.
I think I might, kind of know where Richard's going with this. I think, in some ways people are accessing this data and he doesn't want them to see everything that's associated with the linked record. And instead he wants them to only see the title and like make a selection based on the title, the end, and I don't want you to see any of the other stuff. So in that case, a single select works perfectly, and then you can tie it through an automation to say when they pick this single select, automatically link it to this different record. Another option to explore, Richard, is interfaces, which we unfortunately didn't get a chance to talk about. But when you build interfaces, you can give Airtable users access to an interface, not to the underlying data, and you have a lot more control on how they, on what they see when they're setting things up there.
And Gareth, in an interface, could you hide things like this, like all the stuff
I have to check with forms. Like, it depends on how we're setting this up. If we're using a form or if it's just a linked relationship and there's a pre-existing record. But interfaces have their own form that is different from the view that you just created here. It's like you create a page and an interface.
Oh, actually, they actually do that, which is nice. Check this out. If I open form, or well, you can't see it because it's not the right screen. But yeah, it only shows the tool. It just says tool 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. It doesn't show any of the other attributes in the form.
Right. I think. But if you want people who are on your team, Richard, to be this presupposes that it's people on your team, right? Because they have some form of access to your database, either through an interface or otherwise. But it's worth playing with to see. It depends on how you're sharing that information. Another option, not to go like too far down the rabbit hole, but another option is you build a simple form. A simple form that you could put together in a different third-party tool like Jotform even, and then build automation around that. It really, I mean, the answer to your question, I think, really comes down to what you're trying to accomplish. But the simple answer is no, that's not possible without, some workaround.
Perfect. I guess one more question. So, ideas for documenting bigger Airtable builds?
Yeah, that's a big one to unpack. And more companies are actually finding this to be a problem right now, which is why we're starting to see more people getting hired inside of larger organizations as no-code implementation specialists. So I don't know if your audience has started to experience that themselves, but we're starting to see that and a demand for that growing. Honestly, what it comes down to is, are you using the documentation available inside the tool, or do you have an external, a third-party place where you're documenting? So it could be that you build a mind map in Miro or Whimsical, or any number of mind mapping tools that you use for documentation. It could be that you add the details inside of descriptions and all of that inside of your tables and fields and etc. One of the best practices that I've seen with one of our senior level specialists on our team is she goes in and puts everything, like if she's building an automation with a webhook, for example, she'll include the URL for the automation so that if I ever need to go back and troubleshoot that webhook right there in the document of the automation, I can just click and it opens up the automation in Make or Zapier, and I don't have to go hunting for it. Like, little things like that are going to make your lives really easy.
Hey, Gareth, I have a fun question for you.
Yeah.
Okay,
what if I told you there was what if I told you there was a tool that automatically did most of that for you?
Yeah. Oh, what's the name of that tool, Phil?
It's called Operator.
Amazing.
Yeah. Our goal is to be able to take a lot of the documentation off your plate around like tracking all your automations between different places. We're starting with Zapier and Airtable, but one day like webhooks and all of that stuff like we're helping with. But like I couldn't be more of a big fan of Miro boards and thinking through stuff. And I even tweeted about this yesterday. When it comes to documentation, one of the best things you can do is actually pre-document, right? Like explain your architecture before you build something to someone else and get feedback. Big fan of that thinking. Claudia, do we have any? I think we have one more
We
question.
have so many more questions, but I'm gonna have to pick and choose. So, question from Matt: is there a way to get extensions to work in an interface either by scripting or using Make or Zapier?
Extensions do not currently work in interfaces. So that dedupe thing that we did, Phil, you have to have access to the underlying database itself in order to get that. So this is kind of a good thing, though. In some ways, I think this is by design. I don't want my team deduping data, right? Like,
no, it feels like a data loader type of deal. Like I only want to mess with that on the data admin side, like not have end users touch it.
Exactly. End users need to have filtered data, very curated, stuff.
But you could have a request form on any piece of contact data that's saying, hey, request for dedupe. And then, you handle that,
Totally. You could also build an automation that does it, right? You could say, hey, if I ever, find that this thing comes in, then I want to delete this record or merge this record or whatever. You could totally do that. But, honestly, nice. Dedupe is just one example of many extensions. There are tons of different extensions. And unfortunately, to this question, there is no way to interact with that yet, but it's where we're at. Sorry.
Or fill out, says.
Jared's a very big fan of fill out, which is an advanced form tool that allows you to do way more with Airtable forms. Well, I shouldn't say with Airtable forms, just more advanced forms.
We covered them yesterday in our newsletter.
Yeah.
Oh, they're huge.
Big fan.
They're so good. So
I'm
good.
Starting to be a big fan myself. Looks amazing.
I'm a believer.
If you could give a one sentence, sorry, Gareth, of why fill out over Airtable forms, what's that one sentence?
Airtable is not a form tool. It's a database tool. So for complex forms, you need to go outside of the native environment.
Sounds good. Cool. A question from Amari. How to build a commercial pipe follow-up within my CRM?
Commercial pipeline follow-up. Ultimately, what you want to do through a CRM is track the progress of leads as they go through whatever your nurture sequence is, right? As you move something from prospect to deal. So at a minimum, you would want to have a status field for every contact in your database. And that status field would be a single select field that tracks their current stage in the pipeline. More complex use cases will track time. So how long have they been in each stage? And you can also link to that interactions so that you can go back and look at the history of interactions that you've had with that prospective client. More advanced use cases will also aggregate the data in some sort of reporting, which can be done in charts, either in extensions or in interfaces. And you will want to look at things like, aggregating data in terms of how many leads did we get in a particular timeline. How did we navigate those leads? What was the outcome of those leads that we cultivated within the timeline? And you want to track that over time, really. Whatever metrics, at the end of the day, running a business comes down to generally identifying KPIs or key performance indicators. And you say, this is my goal. This is what I'm, using as a North Star to navigate the ship. And, whatever those KPIs are for you, you need to build them in your CRM so that you have meaningful reporting.
Gareth, as our very last question here, just very quick.
Second to last.
Simple yes or no. Could be a simple yes or no. When it comes to interactions that are not manually tracked, right? Like I called someone, so I logged an interaction record via a form and it hooked it up to that contact. That's straightforward. But what about like when we automatically send someone an email based on an automation, or we automatically, or they read a newsletter, or they do something, right? Like, is there a way to almost see a timeline of that within Airtable where you can see all the interactions of a person, both manual and automatic?
Yes. You can build automations that capture these emails in your CRM, right? So if I emailed a client, you can build an automation that puts that email body in so that you can see the history over time with all the interactions. Personally, it's not my preferred choice because I think you're going to burn through your records very quickly. You get 50,000 records in an Airtable Pro licensed database. I don't know about you, but I feel like I do 50,000 emails in a week, so.
Yep. Got it. Cool beans. That was it.
Awesome. Well, our last question is more of a statement from Ilian and says, I want to get started with Airtable. And so, Ilian, I can take that. A great way for you to get started is by following the free course here offered by Gareth. So I'm going to share the link once again. It's a crash course on Airtable, gets delivered to you via email. I'm actually taking it myself. It's amazing. And so, highly recommended for anyone here that would like to get started with Airtable. And Gareth, thank you so much once again for just giving us your time along this whole month. It has been an incredible journey. As you can tell, we all got very excited, and for sure, we have some really solid foundations now on how to build our CRM in the future. So Jen says this was awesome. So thank you so much on behalf of the whole community at No Code Ops.
Thank you so much, Gareth. This was incredible. You've taken me from 2 to 6 really fast. So appreciate you.
100%. That's what we're here for. Thanks, guys.
I love it. Go
amazing.
Team.
And
Take
so
stick around for our cool outro.
Stick around for the outro. And next week, we're going to have Senior Product Manager at Zapier coming to show us the new feature, the new Zapier tables. So stick around, join our community if you haven't done so yet. It's an amazing Discord, active 24/7. And I guess I'll see you next week. Thank you so much once again, Gareth, and goodbye, Phil.
See you.
Bye, you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.